So let me tell you what just happened, because this is absolutely insane. Donald Trump just signed an executive order that is sending seismic shockwaves through the entire global economy. We're talking about a decision so devastating that Elon Musk is literally screaming about economic chaos on social media, while financial analysts are going into total meltdown mode. Here's the kicker that will leave you speechless. Trump not only decided to impose massive tariffs on virtually every country in the world, he declared a national emergency to do so. A national emergency to justify a global trade war. Can you believe that? And the craziest part of all is that legal experts are saying this could be completely illegal, meaning we're potentially seeing the President of the United States violating federal law to implement an economic policy that could destroy the American economy. It gets even wilder, because the executive order Trump signed yesterday specifically declares that foreign economic and trade practices represent a national emergency for the United States. Let that sink in for a moment. He's literally saying that the fact that other countries trade with America is a threat to national security. It's as if he woke up and decided that the entire global economy is America's enemy. And based on this absolutely insane declaration of emergency, hence a base tariff of 10% on goods from virtually every country on the planet. 10% on everything from everywhere. But wait, there's more. Because for countries with which the United States has larger trade deficits, he's set additional reciprocal tariffs that are even higher. We're talking tariffs that can reach 20, 30, even 40% on some products. It's as if he unilaterally decided to rewrite the rules of international trade overnight. Now let me explain why this matters so much, because the reaction has been absolutely explosive. Elon Musk, who normally supports Trump on practically everything, is literally tweeting about how this will cause massive economic chaos. He's talking about how the tariffs will devastate Tesla's supply chain, increase the prices of electronic components, and fundamentally destroy American competitiveness in the global market. And when Elon Musk, the richest man in the world and one of Trump's biggest supporters, is publicly criticizing a presidential policy, you know things are really serious. It's not just Musk. Wall Street is in total panic. The Dow Jones Index plummeted more than 500 points in the first 2 hours of trading after the decree was announced. Companies are seeing their stocks melt in real time. And economists from both sides of the political spectrum are coming out of hiding to say that this is potentially the worst trade policy decision in the last 50 years. Nobody's talking about, which is absolutely critical to understanding the magnitude of what's happening, is using the National Emergencies Act to implement these tariffs. On the other hand, is a law created for situations like terrorist attacks, natural disasters, or military invasions, not for trade policies. Constitutional experts are saying this is a blatant violation of the separation of powers, because tariffs are supposed to be approved by Congress, not unilaterally imposed by the president through emergency decrees. Constitutional law at Harvard is calling this an economic coup, saying Trump is essentially assuming powers that don't belong to the executive branch. And here's where it gets even crazier. If the courts rule these tariffs illegal, experts think will happen, Trump could be facing not only a reversal of his policy and forearm, but potential criminal charges for abuse of presidential power. But let's talk about the timing for a second, because this is no coincidence. Trump is doing this exactly when the American economy is finally recovering from post-pandemic inflation, finally stabilizing. Consumers were starting to relax a bit and forearm, and now he drops this bomb that will make prices skyrocket again, because that's what tariffs do. They're not paid by foreign countries. They're paid by American importers who pass those costs directly on to consumers. So when Trump imposes a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, it's not China that pays, it's the Americans who buy Chinese goods with hand, and considering that practically everything we buy has components or is manufactured in other countries. We're talking about a price increase in almost every product you can imagine. Electronics, clothing, cars, even seemingly American products that depend on imported components. Now, here's what's really interesting about Musk's reaction, because he's not just complaining about the economic effects. He's specifically talking about how this will affect American technological competitiveness. Tesla relies on electronic components manufactured in Asia, lithium batteries sourced from various countries, and a complex global supply chain that took decades to build. With these tariffs, Musk is saying that Tesla's production cost will rise so drastically that they may not be able to compete with European and Asian automakers in the global market. And it's not just Tesla, Apple, Google, Microsoft. Virtually every American tech company relies on global components. Tim Cook has already said that these tariffs will force Apple to fundamentally rethink its manufacturing strategy, possibly moving production out of the United States to avoid the additional costs. And the international reaction, has been absolutely brutal. The European Union has already announced it is considering retaliatory tariffs on American products. It's talking about restricting exports of rare earth elements essential to American technology. Japan is reconsidering existing trade agreements. It's as if Trump lit a match and threw it into a powder keg. We are potentially seeing the start of a global trade war that could last for years and devastate the world economy. Even more insane, Trump is doing this without consulting allies, without warning trading partners, without even fully informing his own cabinet. With hand and forearm sources in the White House are saying that many economic advisors learned about the executive order from television, just like the rest of us. But let me explain why this moment is so historically charged, because we are potentially witnessing a fundamental shift in America's position in the world. Since the end of World War II, the United States has been the leader of the free international trade system. It was America that created the institutions governing global trade, that promoted the idea that free trade benefits all countries, that built economic alliances that maintained peace and prosperity for decades. And now Trump is essentially declaring war on that entire system. He is saying that the United States no longer wants to lead the world through free trade. It wants to dominate through punitive tariffs and economic warfare. It's such a radical shift in American foreign policy that it will reverberate for generations. Nobody's talking about, but which should be haunting all Americans. This isn't just an economic issue. It's a national security issue.
And forum?
American allies depend on trade with the United States for their economic stability. When Trump attacks these trade relationships, he is fundamentally weakening the alliances that protect America. NATO isn't just a military alliance, it's also an economic alliance. When Trump harms the economies of NATO countries with punitive tariffs, he is making those countries less able to contribute to collective defense. It's as if he's sabotaging the very national security he claims to be protecting.
Within forum.
Now let's talk about the legal implications, because they are absolutely devastating for Trump. The National Emergencies Act requires that any declared emergency be based on a real and immediate threat to national security. A normal international trade does not qualify as a threat to national security. Experts are saying that Trump is essentially lying about the existence of an emergency to assume powers that the Constitution does not give him. And this is not just a political issue. It's potentially criminal. Abuse of presidential power is a federal crime. If the courts determine that Trump falsely declared a national emergency to circumvent Congress, he could face not only impeachment, but criminal charges that could result in imprisonment. And the most ironic part of all this, doing the exact opposite of what he promised during the campaign. He said he would make America prosperous again, but he's implementing policies that will devastate the American economy. He said he would make America respected again, but he's alienating all American allies. He said he would drain the swamp, but he's corruptly using emergency powers to implement policies that will only benefit his wealthiest supporters while harming ordinary workers. It's as if he took all his campaign promises and decided to do the exact opposite. But here's where it gets even wilder. Economists are projecting that these tariffs will cost the average American over $2,000 a year in increased consumer goods costs. $2,000. For a working family, that's devastating. Equivalent of a massive tax increase on the poorest, because they spend a larger percentage of their income on imported goods. Meanwhile, Trump's companies and his billionaire friends will benefit because as their domestic businesses will face less international competition.
Forearm.
It's literally a transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich disguised as national security policy. And the global ramifications are even more frightening. The world economy is interconnected in a way that didn't exist during the last major trade wars. When the United States imposes massive tariffs, it doesn't just affect the targeted countries, it affects the entire global supply chain that aren't even directly targeted by the tariffs will see their economies damaged because they depend on components or materials that pass through the United States. We're talking about a chain reaction that caused global recession, massive unemployment, and political instability in dozens of countries. Crux of the matter that should terrify all Americans. Trump is setting a dangerous precedent for future presidents. If he can use the National Emergencies Act to implement tariffs without congressional approval, what prevents future president from using the same tactic to implement any policy they want? Forearm, it's a fundamental erosion of American democracy because it removes power from the people's elected Congress and concentrates all economic power in the hands of the president. It's exactly the kind of concentration of power that the American founders tried to prevent when they wrote the Constitution. But let's be actually honest here about what's really going on behind the scenes, because sources familiar with the matter are painting a picture of total chaos in the White House. Economic advisors are apparently in panic mode, desperately trying to convince Trump to reconsider before the damage becomes irreversible. The Treasury Secretary is reportedly threatening to resign if the tariffs aren't modified. The National Economic Advisor is saying this could be the worst economic policy decision in modern American history. With hand and forearm, and Trump is apparently ignoring them all, saying he understands economics better than any expert. The reaction on social media has been absolutely explosive, with business owners from all sectors posting about how these tariffs will destroy their businesses. The CEO of Walmart is saying they will be forced to raise prices significantly. The president of Ford is talking about how this will make American cars less competitive globally. Small business owners are posting desperate videos explaining how their companies may not survive the increased import costs. It's as if the entire American business community is shouting in unison that this is an economic catastrophe in the making. Here's what's most frustrating about this whole situation. There were ways to address legitimate concerns about international trade without declaring economic war on the entire world. Bilateral negotiations, multilateral trade agreements, disputes through the World Trade Organization. These are all diplomatic tools the United States could use to resolve trade issues. But Trump chose the most destructive option possible, one that will harm America more than any other country. It's like using a nuclear bomb to kill a fly. The implications for the next election are also enormous, because if these tariffs really do cause the economic chaos that experts are predicting, Trump may be handing the 2028 election to the Democrats on a silver platter. Americans vote with their wallets, and if they are paying significantly more for everything because of Trump's tariffs, they will hold the Republicans accountable. It's potentially slow motion political suicide, except it will take the entire American economy down with it. And the final irony, which should be painfully obvious to anyone paying attention, is that Trump is doing exactly what he accused other countries of doing. He constantly complained about unfair trade practices by other countries and forearm, about how they used tariffs to harm American companies. And now he's doing the same thing, but on a much larger scale. It's pure hypocrisy in its most destructive form, forearm. So let me summarize what's really happening here, because the magnitude of this situation cannot be underestimated. Donald Trump has unilaterally declared a trade war against virtually every country in the world and forearm. Using emergency powers he probably doesn't have the legal right to use, implementing policies that will devastate the American and global economy, ignoring the advice of virtually every economic expert, and creating dangerous precedents that could permanently damage American democracy. He's doing all this based on a fundamental lie that normal international trade constitutes a national security emergency. And what happens next could shape the future of America and the world for decades. If the courts don't stop these tariffs quickly, we're looking at a potential global recession that could last for years. If countries retaliate with their own tariffs, and we're looking at a trade war that could destroy the international trading system that has maintained peace and prosperity for 70 years.
And forum.
If Trump manages to use emergency powers to bypass Congress, in that forearm, we're looking at a fundamental erosion of American democracy that may never be repaired. Whatever the outcome, one thing is absolutely certain. We are living through history being made in real time. And nobody, not even Trump himself, really knows how it will end. But if the experts are right, and all the evidence suggests they are, we are about to discover that starting a global trade war is much easier than ending one.